Welcome to Beyond the Breakwater, where just beyond the crashing waves of fear, discomfort, and doubt lies the greatest potential for life transformation. We want to guide you into the open waters where the calculated risk you take becomes the turning point for you or your organization to thrive. So draw up your anchors and prepare for departure in this week's episode of Beyond the Breakwater. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Breakwater. I'm Lyndsay, and with me is Ed. It's good to be back. We kind of took a few weeks off. That's unbeknownst to the listeners, but just on our end. And so it's good being back in the studio today.
It's really good being back. It feels a little funny, doesn't it, after being gone for a few weeks?
Yeah. But again, no hiccups to the listeners. And so I'm really thankful we have like kind of that backstock. But it's really fun doing this because I think especially right now as we're recording these, because we're kind of now in a place I think where we can start to bring people up to speed with where we're at with what's happening live and in the now and what we're going through as a church and in leadership. Just because we spent so much of the last year educating people on like the history and the why we're doing what we're doing and the principles. And so today's going to be another conversation where we're bringing listeners into what's happening now, and to not just talk about things in hindsight, but it's like, all right, we're right in it. This is where it's really hard. This is where we're dreaming. And I think, right off the bat, what we're going to be talking about today and in this episode and the next episode are dreams of where you're at right now and kind of where our church is at, of dreaming what's ahead. And just the steps that we take to get there. I think as we hear back from listeners and we continue inviting listeners to Midland to come and learn in the presentation, we take them around and tour the ministries. We're learning what is helpful to people. And I think what we're finding that's helpful is people want the steps. They want a list of like A through Z. This is how we do it. And we've been saying, like, we're not going to tell you to copy and paste. We'll give you the principles, but we can try to give you maybe a blueprint along the way. So today in this first episode, we're just going to quickly go over this list that you and I kind of created of how do you even begin? Like once you start to have an idea or a dream or something that the Lord is calling to you as an individual or a church, like where do you go from there? So this list, it's 9 steps. You have pray, first of all. Second, start with a dream. Tell others about that dream, which we're also going to do today, which is probably one of the scariest things, right?
It is really scary, actually, for me.
Yeah. Why is it scary for you?
I think I tend to hold my cards a little bit closer, especially the bigger the dream. And I share it, but not with a lot of people. And here we are sharing it very publicly.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm sure people are going to be like, what? He's dreaming about, he's thinking about what? You know?
Yeah.
So,
like your head's in the clouds, you're crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And you've heard that before from all of the stuff
times.
We've historically talked about, like starting up the grocery store, starting a garage, all that stuff. So we're kind of in that space again.
We are.
Yeah, but this time doing it a little bit more publicly than just calling up a friend and telling them.
Right.
So that's number 3, telling others about your dream. 4, starting small. You may see the end goal or what you want this thing to be, but starting small. Make a plan is number 5. 6, pray some more. 7, bring others along. 8, wait on God. And 9, watch for opportunities. So that's just banging through them really, really quick, but we'll kind of expand on this in the next episode. But to kind of lay the groundwork, we're going to talk about that dream today. Is there anything you want to touch on from this list before jumping into that?
Before we jump in, the only thing that I would maybe throw out is we're really facing a lot of challenges. And I think there's a lot of frustration right now on my part. Frustration because we want to do more. We're trying to do more. And we're at a limit, and until God decides to kind of like show us that next step that we're supposed to be taking. So I think people are going to maybe hear a little bit like, it's not just like, oh, we have this pie in the sky dream. No, I've been in some really difficult meetings this week, even one this morning where it's just like, Lord, please, we really could use this right now. This would be amazing if we had more houses and I know we'll talk about all this stuff, but it's coming from a place of what are you waiting for? Because now is the time, and I think we're ready. And we've gone through all those steps, but we're in that season of waiting.
Yeah. And you and I were just talking yesterday, and I was like, sometimes it feels like when you want something the most is kind of when your like decision making is the least reliable, because it's just like, oh, like we're ready. We want it now. God, what are you waiting for? And you just want to scramble to make something happen. And I think the hardest part in all of this is discerning when to take a step and when to wait. So we're going to sit in that tension a lot today.
We're in that tension.
Yeah. So maybe kind of give people an idea of where we're at currently. Like you mentioned, some challenges that you're facing, some limitations. Kind of maybe let's lay the groundwork there. What challenges or limitations are you talking about?
Well, the one that I was just referring to, so we have a house. It's a first of what I would love to see 20 homes. The short term is that we've been doing this for a number of years, and we bring people into the house for up to 3 years. We try to help them get back on their feet financially. And what we do is we use the house so that we charge 30% of whatever they make, and then we rebate all of it back to them. So we keep usually back about $100 a month, and that pays for cleaning the carpet, painting the house when they leave. And I know this is even a backstory. If we went back further, we bought the home for $40,000. We renovated it. We actually asked people that were homeless to help us renovate it and paid them to do this. And so now it's been this incredible house. But we had a conversation with the tenant that's currently in there right now. And they brought me back in because I've asked others to run with this ministry, and they asked me to come back into the meeting because I wanted to help make sure that in 2 years, when it's coming up to that 3-year term, that the house is actually being used for its purpose. And that's to help that person get back on their feet. And when they leave the house, they're in better shape than when they got here. And it's so easy to take this concept and say, oh, how about we use the money that we're rebating for things that are not producing a greater return later. For example, can I use this for to buy a car? But a car diminishes in value, where we would like to use this for a down payment, so you're saving up for a down payment so that you're ready in 2 years, or for education so that now you're in a better place to earn money for yourself in 2 years. And it's sliding into a little bit more, well, let's use it for things for our kids. Let's use it for things that are consumables. And that's not at all what the house is designed for.
That's really hard to be the judge of that for somebody else.
Yeah, and I don't want to be the judge, and I don't want to be stand there. So I really had to come in and just cast vision just to say, but if we do all these consumables, and in 2 years when you have to leave the house, are you going to be able to afford the rent? And here's what we were looking at. I mean, right now we're paying our tenant is paying in the 800s for rent for a house.
Which right now the average is $1,300.
It just went up again. And actually, even in Midland, in the state of Michigan, in Midland, it's over $1,500.
Wow.
And when we did a market value for the house, it's $1,475 for the house that we currently have.
Wow.
That's
Okay.
market value. So somebody's paying in the 800s.
Yeah.
And it's $1,400. So that means we have 2 years to get them from 800 up to 1,400 so that when they leave us, they're in a place that they can afford rent here in Midland. I mean, that's the whole design of the house. So I was getting frustrated, Lyndsay. I was getting really, not at anybody, but at the situation of if only we could do the next stream. And the next stream would be we could evaluate the house in 2 years and offer it to a tenant and say, you can stay in this house, you can buy this house, and we'll sell it to you under a land contract so that they would just be paying what they're paying or maybe what they can afford, and set out for about, we think we can do it for 10 or 12 years so that that person would actually own the house clear and free in 12 years. They would pay no interest. I mean, imagine having you can buy a house with no interest, no down payment.
Right.
But it makes it affordable for somebody who right now it's unaffordable. So I was just, in my spirit, I was frustrated, like, if only we had more homes. And we could choose to sell the home to this tenant. But if we do, we're out of the housing ministry. and we wouldn't have any money to go buy another house.
So why does this current challenge keep you from pursuing that next dream?
It's not keeping me from it, but we need dollars. I mean, the next dream is we would need 160,000 maybe for a second house. And if we want 20 homes, then we're talking about $3 million. So ideally, my dream would be I would love 20 homes because then you could have some people in the short-term program for 3 years. And remember, sometimes people come to us with way too much debt. Let's just say $25,000 debt, and they can't afford rent and debt. And so we use the house by keeping $100 back, and we rebate the rest of it. It pays down the debt. So that in 3 years, they have no debt, and now they can afford the rent that they couldn't afford. They couldn't service both the debt and the rent. So it's just sometimes, this is why we are sitting in the tension of, I'm waiting.
Yeah.
I wish somebody could grab a vision to say, wow, you mean if I took money out of an investment and I bought a house for the church or gave the money to the church and the church would buy the house, now we could have 2 houses. And my dream, I know this is a bigger dream, but it fits right in it. I think we can eradicate homelessness, at least here, so that when people show up in the men or the women's shelter, there's a plan.
Yeah,
to
a
get
way
them
out. There's a
way
path out.
There's a
Yeah.
pathway out. And if you think about all the things that we have, to help support that. So it's a tension of, we have a house, which I am so grateful for. I don't want to ever seem like I'm not grateful. I'm so grateful that we have one, but we can't really change a lot of lives and really change the circumstances that we're seeing in Midland.
Yeah.
Because we're limited.
Right. And the housing ministry is pretty different from all of our other ministries, where it's like the most expensive, the most impactful, but it's really impacting like one person at a time for 3 years.
Right.
So it's has a lot longer of a trajectory to see that versus like the bridge can have hundreds of people coming in and out of it every day.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing because, we're in this inflationary period and the home that we bought, I told you we bought it for $40,000. We put about $60,000 into it. So it was really worth $100,000 just not too many years ago.
Yeah.
And now they're telling us it's worth $150,000.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So imagine how much we could help a person by charging either market value that's going to continue to go up. But I'm thinking of the investor. So remember when a person, I think people can go back and listen to that podcast, when I approached the family and said, would you donate a house? And they donated the house. Well, the house has gone up 50% in value, which is huge.
Yeah.
So the investment that they gave went up in value, and we're going to be able to actually sell it, impact lives, and how many lives has it impacted already?
Yeah. So I want to get to your list of dreams. And I've only ever really heard the full thing once, and it was incredible. And you mentioned like this is a scary thing for you to do because it's very public, and you're not just, it's already scary to get on the phone and tell one person probably, because at risk of like now I have to commit to this. Now I have to follow through with this. Like I just started maybe thinking about doing a marathon, and even like thinking of doing that and telling people, I'm like, oh, the more people I'm telling, the more I have to like commit to this thing. And so it's just a really scary thing to do. So doing it publicly, I feel like that has weight to it of there's a reason why you're doing this. So before jumping into that list, why are you doing this? For any other reason for listeners to just hear it and go, huh, interesting. Like, why is it important that you're doing this on a podcast?
I think we're bringing people along in the process because you said it at the very beginning. I think we've done a really good job of educating the listeners for everything that we've done in the past and what we've learned, how we do ministry, all of the different ministries that we're doing, which I know for some people have been like, whoa, that's a little overwhelming. But I think now it's different because we're in it. And so even this week, I've been having conversations with, last night with a church leader who's in it. But he's in it on the first step. And her first step was he gathered the church, invited the church last night, and they gathered together because they wanted to talk about what they might do in their community.
And this is like another church in a different part of the state,
Yes.
not our church, but another
Right.
church leader
who's
is doing
just
this.
starting the process and called and said, do I have any maybe thoughts or recommendations on what they might do? And I did. I said, I think I would this Sunday go before the church and just say, we would like everybody to, between now and Thursday, when the next meeting is next Thursday, is to go into the town, go to the gas station, go in and buy something instead of just checking out at the pump, go in and buy something, talk to the attendant and say, can I ask you a question? What are the unmet needs in our community? And at first it was kind of funny because he was like, for real? And I said, yeah, I think it'd be great. And I said, well, we just did it. And I told him the story that a few weeks ago we went to Grand Rapids to a conference and we presented the pastors about Beyond the Breakwater, and we stopped at Subway and we asked that very question. And he goes, oh, well, obviously they knew you were a pastor, right? I said, no. And he goes, no, they didn't know. And I said, no. And you just asked them what the needs were in the community? I said, yeah. And he said, well, what did they say? And I said, well, they really want kindness in the community. And I can't change that. Is there anything else? And do you remember?
Did they say loneliness?
Loneliness and prayer.
Yeah.
Because we asked about prayer. And I was like, interesting. So the reason why we're sharing our dreams is because it doesn't matter necessarily where you've been, it's where you're going. And so this is where we're going. And a church is just starting out in this journey. Where are they going? And so I think they're trying to come up with a dream. I think we're just sharing dreams.
So what is that dream of yours? There's a number to it. What's the number?
There is.
A total number.
And I'm sure people are going to do the math, and it's $105 million of dreams.
105. 105.
$105 million of dreams. There's a little backstory. So we bought this building, and I think we've shared with listeners before that the church was willing to use their building as collateral so that we could buy this 33,000 square foot building, which is where the Bridge Food Center is currently located at. And we moved in there just about 4 months ago. So it's $1 million, even though we have a mortgage. It's $1 million. And because back a few months, I just felt like the Lord started prompting me to start praying, like pray for a bigger dream. So I was thinking, well, $1 million, that's a lot. Just praying for $1 million would be a lot. And I just felt prompting of, well, 10x it, like a tithe, 10x it. Okay, so I started praying for 10 million, which I thought was insane. Actually, 11 million, because it's like we have the $1 million building, so let's pray for 10 million more, plus the building, so 11 million. So I just started praying for $11 million. And I was praying for this for a while, and I did, like our steps, I shared it, and with a couple of guys who are Gen Zers or millennials, I'm not sure which. It was after a board meeting, and I was just talking about this, and one of them said, why 10x? I said, what do you mean? Why not more?
You're like, but why more?
I was like, that's crazy. More? And they said, well, don't you remember the sower and the seed? That it produced 100-fold or 60-fold or 30-fold. And now it changed me a little bit. I went back and I said, Lord, is that from you? Because I said, if we're going to do 100x, that means I'm praying for 100 million. And all of a sudden it was fun. And I said, what would I do with $100 million? What could God do with $100 million? And how could we change more lives, not just here in Midland, but across the nation? So I began to pray for more, for 100. So then I sat down with a piece of paper and I said, all right, what would I do? So I started to say, well, we could use this building. That would be $4 million. We need another building million, and I started writing them all down. How much do we need for personnel? How much do we need? And when I got done, I had $105 million. And so I think $1 million is out of reach, but I think 105 million is not out of reach. So you remember from last week, we had a meeting with some people. And do you remember how they responded to that 100? Because we shared this.
Yeah.
What was their response?
There was a lot. There was a lot within that meeting. I mean, all throughout it, like we gave them this list and they were circling, they were starring, and you had asked, you were like, do you think that this is within reason? Is this doable? And one of them said, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's going to happen. And she said, like we live in an age where there are so many broken people and the need is so great, but it's doable.
That scared me. And then Andre, listeners might remember when we had Andre, the executive director from Care Village down in South Africa. And I've been talking to him every week. And he shared with me just a couple weeks ago. I said, Andre, do you think that's too much? And he said, no, I think God's going to give it to you. I'm really confident God's going to give it to you. And Lyndsay, that's scary for me.
Why?
Because it's amazing if God did this.
I feel like it's exciting to you.
Oh, it's so exciting.
I wouldn't put scared to anytime I've seen your reaction to people affirming that.
Yeah, you're probably right. I don't know what it is, but deep down, maybe it's like, is it too big? And yet when I think, is it too big? I am almost always reminded that, no, it's not. No, this is something that God could do. Because there's a lot of lives that are going to be changed by it.
Yeah. So what's on that list? I'm sure people are dying to know. We're just dangling the carrot. 105 million.
We are. Okay. Well, we can start with like some of the smaller ones first.
Okay.
I mean, $3 million for housing. We talked about that. Because that would change 20 lives at a time.
$3 million would get you 20 homes?
$3 million would get us about 20 homes in our community.
Okay.
And then it would change lives because we would actually go to the homeless shelters. And we also have like a re-entry program for those coming out of jail or prison. And we would be enlisting them. It's kind of funny how this all sometimes ties together. I'm pulling in a lot of other podcasts, like Matt Markey, who's at Pivot Point, and his dreams is roofs and ramps. And so we've been praying for the last year because I said, Matt, what do you need in order to go to roofs and ramps? Right now he's doing appliances. And he said, first of all, he needs his license, general contractor license, which got
that happened
6 or 7 months ago. And then he said he needs an assistant manager. And so we've been praying for a year for an assistant manager. And 2 days ago, I walked into Pivot Point just for my weekly, touch base, and walked in and met this new guy. And I'm like, oh, hi, my name's Ed. What's your name? Oh, my name is Scott. And I said, oh, are you new here? And he goes, yeah, I'm the assistant manager. And I just stopped because it was like, Lord, you're doing it. This is what we've been praying for.
And I want to point out like how like you were shocked at this news.
I was.
And I think when people visit too, they're like, okay, you're doing all of these things. You're in all of these ministries. You're overseeing them. That must mean your hands are on them every single day. But it's like for that to be a reaction, like let that just show like to raise up leaders and trust that they will run within the ministry and raise it up and build it and develop it. And that was with you just checking in from a week to week basis. That just came up within a week.
And I had no idea. I didn't know he was being interviewed. I didn't know where he came from. I didn't know anything about him.
I feel like God's like playing chess. He's like, all right, now we'll move this piece in. Matt's getting his license. And now this piece. And here's your assistant manager.
Yes. So now we have the person and we have the license and we have the passion from Matt ready to go on this. And imagine if somebody come along and say, here's $150,000 per house. We would buy a house that needs a lot of work. And we have the contractor and we have the people. And Pivot Point's goal is to have 100 people. Right now they have 3 besides Matt that are working. And so that's a lot of lives. He wants to change 100 lives at a time. And so it's like, oh, you're right. Like the chess game, we just moved forward, and God just moved one ministry forward, and that got me super excited because I'm like, are houses coming? Is money coming for houses? Because it would be an amazing thing.
So that would be, so that's 30 million of
3
this
million.
3 million. Dear goodness.
Pretty low. Okay,
Okay.
let's go even smaller.
Okay.
Our lowest one is $250,000.
Okay.
And that dream is for, let's talk about the garage ministry. So I think our listeners know that we have an automotive repair facility, licensed with the state of Michigan. We also have a car dealership to go along with it. And we started a parts department. And the parts department it's going to be part of a bigger discussion. So we can go there if you want to go there.
I think we talked about it on
did.
a previous podcast with Mike when he was on.
We did, but here's, I think, the thing that listeners need to know is that ministries, these entrepreneurial ministries, they need funding strategies. And so what grieves my heart sometimes in the garage, I mean, we've got great mechanics, great. And we're paying everybody as much as we can. But when you're not charging the clients, that much money, the only way to raise salaries is you either have to have outside funding or you have to charge more to the people that you're trying to serve. And that's a huge tension.
Yeah.
Like we can pay our mechanics more if we take from the people that we're trying to serve who can't afford it to say, I know you can't afford this, but I'm going to charge you more so that I can give more to our mechanics. There seems to be something not quite right with me on that.
Right.
Because otherwise, why not just charge full price? And then we can pay our mechanics the most.
So we're giving clients a discount on labor. Why not just up it another $2 to put that into the paychecks of our mechanics? But what you're saying is like that would just be on the backs of those we're serving.
That's it.
So the funding strategy needs to come into each ministry. Like each ministry needs a funding strategy.
Yes.
So that way it is not like breaking those who we're serving.
Yes.
So then where would it come from?
Okay, so this is new for us. I think we learned this at the bridge, so I know we're going to talk about that later. But we learned it because we need some kind of another asset. And if we take another asset, so it's an asset strategy to have a funding strategy. And there's a ministry strategy. So all of them have assets, funding, ministry. And you either have to, like if we're going to raise salaries up for mechanics, we either have to go into the community and get grants. But I don't think we've ever gotten a grant for anything for the garage in 11 years except for equipment. And that was right off the bat. People don't want to give for programming. They don't want to give for the cost of doing the ministry. Donors just don't like to do that. So the parts department, and I know we've told this story about somebody who gave us a $20,000 gift, and we bought parts. Now, why does that matter? Because here'd be an example of it. If you walked into a parts store and bought a sensor for your tire, so that when your tire pressure goes low, and then that little thing comes on in your car saying, you need air in your tire.
And I go, yeah, right. Just
Right.
keep driving. Yeah.
Yeah, keep driving. Just ignore it. Put a piece of tape over it. That's what I used to do. Put a piece of black tape over it. Don't look at it. So those are about $54 if you go into a normal parts store, just retail. So our cost might be in the 30s for that same part because we're a repair facility. We buy wholesale, so we might buy it for 30-something, but we have a very small markup on that part for our clients. But when you buy them in bulk and you buy them at 100 at a time, our cost for those goes down to about 17.
Wow.
Okay, so now what we can do is we can still pass along a good discount to our clients, cheaper than if they bought it retail. And because we're buying in bulk, now we can take that extra $20 for every tire sensor we have, and that could go to pay our mechanics more money. Okay, so now that we have $20,000 of parts, and we bought $20,000 of parts, we're actually doing exactly what that is, what's on our sheet. What is our plan? We're working our plan right now. Last week, we got a software package that was given to us. It was actually used for a tool and die, which has nothing to do with that. That's the machines that make parts for like a car or make parts for drill bits or make
Okay.
parts for everything that we have. Okay. That's what tool and die is. So it's a tool and die software that was given to us that we can use for car parts. So sometimes you just use what you have. So now we've got people that are putting out a data entry for all the parts that we already bought from this donor. And remember, the parts never, that investment never goes away.
Right. Because we're charging for what we're paying for them. It's like now that we have that money back, we can just go and buy another part. Yes?
Yes. So if we have that tire sensor that we bought for $17 and then we sell it to a client for, say, $34, now we have we have $34, but we have the money to go ahead and buy that part back. So we'll always have the parts. So in 10 years, we're going to have $20,000 of parts. But what we really need is about $250,000 of parts. Because if we have $250,000 of parts, that means every part or nearly every part that we would ever use in a year's time, we have, and we bought in bulk. Now, there's a little bit of a business principle here. You want to turn it over 2.5 times a year. So like if you buy a tire sensor, you want to make sure that you can, however many you buy, you've used them 2.5 times. So if you buy 100, you want to use 250 of those every single year. That's a good turnover for parts. So we can actually, with a gift of $250,000, we could run a parts store. We could then hire somebody to help manage the parts store, and we would also use it for retail. And I don't want anybody to miss the mission strategy, because remember when we talked about intersecting in a person's life, like you can't be Jesus to somebody you've never met. Well, if now we have a parts store, now the community is welcome to come into the parts store. Through the parts store, because we'll be large enough, now we can support other garages. So now you have the church that's supporting another garage, and we could hire people who have barriers to employment. We could buy a van, so we're helping the economy. We would buy a van or two with the savings. We could pay our mechanics more money. We could support other garages, which is only going to generate more revenue so that we could fund the ministry that we're doing by helping people in our community. So if anybody listening, I don't want to overwhelm them, but it's incredibly exciting for a very small gift that for somebody who has a little bit more money, even if it was, we could give you $10,000 a month for 20 months, we would just grow into it. And the impact would be huge. It would allow us also to pay the mechanics more, because sometimes in the nonprofit world, you lose great mechanics because somebody offers them more money.
Yeah.
And this way we can keep great mechanics with a missional purpose, serve the community, serve the public, serve garages for one gift. One gift. And that gift will continue on for the next 2, 3, 4 decades.
I mean, we've seen that with the bridge. We've talked about how an initial gift has been recycled at this point now probably 45 plus times.
Plus.
Yeah, it's incredible. So it's like that gift with the multiplication principle that we've talked about is reused again and again and again and again.
Yes.
So all of these dreams that you're talking about all have this kind of strategy where the money never runs out, really. We need that initial investment in order to get that money going.
Right.
So we're kind of at the end of an episode here. I wasn't sure where we were going to land. Yeah, it went
quick.
really fast, but we'll continue talking about this in the next episode. I think, at least for me, and you can like chime in on this too, but before listeners go, I would say like take a look at the websites and kind of see what the ministries are like now. There are pictures on that website. If anything that we've said today kind of stirs your heart where it's like, I want to give to that and fund it, there's a link in the description where you can go and donate to a ministry of your choosing. We're never asking for money, but just if it is something that you're like, I feel led to do this, just know that that's always an opportunity for you to get involved in. You don't have to live in Midland to really be a part of the impact that happens here. Ed, is there anything else that you would encourage listeners to do before they go?
No, I just can't believe the time went so quick. I hope it went as quick for the listeners as it did for us.
Yeah. All right, we will jump back into this conversation next week. We'll catch you all then. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Beyond the Breakwater, a podcast of Elevate Community Ministries. Don't let the conversation stop here. You can email us at hello@beyondthebreakwater.org. We would love to chat with you, answer questions, plan a visit, and help you take your next step. We'll see you next week.